Air raids and explosions around Ukraine's capital this morning as Russian forces close in on Kyiv. So Bradley Blackburn is just outside of the United Nations right now with the very latest on what is happening there and how the rest of the world is reacting. Bradley, good morning.
Anne-Marie, good morning. Day 2 of this invasion, and Kyiv is the clear target. Ukrainian officials say there have been missile strikes against the city as Russian troops close in. There are also reports of Russian special forces on the ground in Kyiv. Overnight, Ukraine's foreign minister said the last time the capital faced this kind of threat was when Nazi Germany attacked 80 years ago. Russian forces appear to be converging on Kyiv. Air raid sirens sounded in the Ukrainian capital this morning, followed by reports of explosions across the city. Residents were told to take shelter as world leaders braced for Kyiv to fall.
This is the opening salvo of a massive invasion, and we see this continuing and threatening Kyiv and threatening other major cities in Ukraine.
While it's difficult to verify casualty numbers, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said 137 Ukrainians were killed during the first day of the invasion, and he insists civilians are being targeted. Russian leader Vladimir Putin pressed ahead with the offensive despite widespread condemnation and growing economic sanctions. Diplomats called for an immediate end to the hostilities.
I repeat my appeal from last night to President Putin. Stop the military operation. Bring the troops back to Russia.
President Biden blamed Russia for launching what he called a war without cause.
Putin is the aggressor. Putin chose this war, and now he and his country will bear the consequences.
The White House says 80% of Russia's banking assets are now subject to sanctions. And nations around the world are joining in those sanctions with one major exception, China. The Chinese are instead lifting some trade restrictions on Russia and criticizing the international sanctions. Anne-Marie, China is even refusing to use the term invasion to describe what's happening in Ukraine.
Well, they are top trading partners, China and Russia. You are outside the UN. The Security Council is set to vote this afternoon on a draft resolution condemning Russia. When you spoke to us yesterday, you reminded us that Russia has veto power. So, what is the purpose of this resolution and why even bother?
Well, Emery, at this point, there are real questions about the Ukrainian government and whether it can continue to stand in the face of this Russian aggression. And so recognizing this moment on the international stage gives the Ukrainian ambassador a chance to speak to the world, make his case, and shows recognition of that power. So although Russia does have veto power over anything that goes before the Security Council, it is still a powerful moment of diplomacy to allow the diplomats to criticize Russia directly on the world stage.
So, Bradley, when something like this happens, like what's happening in Ukraine, there's a ripple effect. There are unintended consequences that sometimes you don't think about ahead of time. And here's one of them. There are concerns about the operations going on the International Space Station. As you know, it's an international crew there, including Americans and Russians. Can you talk a little bit about what are the concerns about the ways that this conflict could impact operations up there?
This is an interesting facet of all this because as nations around the world put up their lines against Russia and distance themselves, we don't really have that option with the International Space Station. Anne-Marie, it's interesting. The International Space Station cannot be operated by the United States alone. We have to have the support of Russia to operate some components. So this sanction against American technology, the question is, would that get in the way of the operation of the space station? NASA says that the sanctions will not interfere with the operation of the station and that they continue to cooperate with the Russian Space Agency. So things are moving forward as normal, at least in space.
Well, let's hope it stays that way. Bradley, thank you very much.